Welcome to the Audiobook Lovin Podcast, discussing all things audiobooks with the authors that write the stories and the narrators that perform them. Brought to you by Viviana, Enchantress of Books.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 27 of the Audiobook Lovin Podcast. And today I'm excited to welcome narrator Andrew Joseph Perez. Hi.
Hello.
It's so good to talk to you again. We met at Steamy Lit, and it's been, like, oh my God, I got to talk to him again ever since.
We did have a good time. We had a good time. That was my very first con of any kind as like a participant. What I'm still not even sure what to call that, but yeah, that was my very first book con.
Yeah, there's a lot of firsts for this event in the sense that, like, it was my first time in California, period, or going traveling that far west. So yeah, but we will get into all that stuff because it was a good event that I want to make sure that we highlight a little later on. But we're gonna start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been narrating, and how you got started.
Yeah. So I am born and raised California boy. I have pretty much stayed on this side of the country my entire life. I went to school in Seattle, came back to the Central Valley, Northern California, and then now I'm in Los Angeles. I was a big theater guy pre-pandemic. The majority of my income came from regional theater contracts and other live performance gigs. So I've worked all over the place. I've done shows everywhere from Milwaukee to Memphis to Bahrain. And then along came COVID and my industry went away. I had 2020 was set up to be a really, really good year with a lot of work lined up. Like kind of one of those, like, I've finally gotten to the point where it's January and I'm booked through October. All right, I'm doing the damn thing. And then along came COVID and it all evaporated overnight. So I was fortunate that I don't mind telling the world that I was working for a really terrible company. They have locations in Orange County, California, and also in Florida. It's the Pirates Dinner Adventure. Really, really abusively managed company. Very dangerous working environments. It's a stunt show, but like it was not a good place to work. It was not a safe place to work. And fortunately, however, they were my one W-2 job. And so when all of the lockdowns and shutdowns began, because of that job, I was able to get unemployment. So I was able to float for a little while, but unemployment payments aren't going to let you survive in Los Angeles. So I knew I needed to find a way to make a new form of a living. And I started asking other performer friends, what are you guys doing? How have you been making ends meet? And people kept recommending audiobooks. So I reached out to a couple of friends who were already in the game. And you shout out to Alex Ralph. She was instrumental in getting me started. Shout out to Kurt Bonham, was super instrumental in getting me started. Zach Villa was super, super helpful. He's the one who I called upon when I needed to come up with my pseudonym Julio Maxwell, to say, Zach, you've been in this game for a while. How do I come up with a fake name? What do I do? Do I do an overt pun? Do I just call myself Big Johnson? What do I do? But these friends really, really helped me out getting started. So I got on ACX and I did some samples and I started auditioning just nonstop, relentlessly. Did my first couple of books. I think my very first book was December 2020. And then throughout 2021, I stayed on ACX, but started poking around. Another friend, Luzma Ortiz, got me connected with the APA, the Audio Publishers Association. And once I was linked in with them, I did virtual APAC. I did what was then called speed dating, what's now called quick pitch, where narrators can pitch themselves in 5 minutes to a bunch of publishers. And then I just used all of the business knowledge that I already had to start reaching out to publishing houses directly through the APA's contact directory. And from December 2020 until now, I'm just right around 90 titles under my belt at this point, and I'm loving it. It has become my full-time gig. I told in my initial emails to all of the publishers when I was introducing myself, I told them, look, this is my background. This is what I'm doing now. I intend for this to be my full-time job. I would love to be on your roster. And if you have anything that I fit, I would love to start working immediately. And it's been beautifully and blessedly nonstop ever since.
That is, I think, a lot recent with narrators and getting into this industry. Even some of them discovering, oh, there's this thing called audiobook stuff. And like, yeah.
Yep.
So as much as there was very, very, very bad things going on with COVID, I think there was also some of those silver linings where being able to be an entrepreneur and starting the own businesses, as well as learning that there's this other world out there where you can also get your acting chops in and use that skill sets to just stay in a booth, in a closet, speaking to yourself in multiple voices and tones and things like that.
And I it's such a unique corner of the entertainment industry. And I will sing the praises of the audiobook world forever and ever, amen, because coming from, so I'm multiracial. I mainly have been cast traditionally as either just a generic white character or the Latino. I've very frequently been the token Latino, and in the regional theater world, that it sucks. It sucks. There's a lot of racism. There's a lot of problems. There's a lot of problematic people. A lot of shit gets said that should not be said. A lot of shit gets done that should not be done. And it's also just a very catty, very political industry. Coming into audiobooks has been such a blessing because nobody's racist. I don't have any crappy directors or producers or co-stars that I have to deal with. Everybody's really nice, and it works. Though it's the only corner of the entertainment industry that I have found that operates the way every other business on the planet operates. Like, if you turn out a good product and you're proactive, you can do this. And you don't have to play this like, oh my God, you're so cool and funny, and I love you so much, to people who are actively abusive. Like,
yes.
it's a really beautiful place to land in. And I think, like you said, COVID opened up this world to a lot of performers of different types that just didn't know that this was around. And it does. I mean, you probably know better than I do, but it seems like that influx of seasoned performers coming into the narration space has also kind of in a way upped the game, or how performative and how nuanced the audiobooks have started to be.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting to see it in the sense of how it was prior to 2020, and then now. It's one of those things where I love the fact that anyone can decide tomorrow or right now that, hey, I want to be an audiobook narrator.
Yeah.
And have no experience whatsoever. Right. And then start from there. And there's really no huge obstacles saying, no, you can't. There's career paths, and there's things that you have to learn, and things that you should be learning, coaching, and things that will happen as you continue to move on this, new journey. But there's not a whole lot of people saying, nope, no, you shouldn't do that. No. So it's great. And then having a lot of these more seasoned narrators, helping on that journey or providing guidance, such as becoming coaches, but also just providing some of that input. But also on the flip side of that, just because someone told you sounded sexy saying that word for 2 seconds doesn't mean that you should be getting into narration and think that you're going to get 1,000 books and be like, dude, I'm making it.
Right.
Because we need stamina, okay?
Yes.
We want consistency. If he has an accent in chapter 1, he better have an accent in chapter 45.
Yeah, if you're going to do this voice for 2 seconds, but you can't sustain it for 18 hours, then what are we doing?
Exactly. Yeah. And again, that's also because of social media and how that's been platformed. And we have a lot of more influxes again. It almost comes in waves. And for someone if anybody that's new to this world sees it as this huge ocean, and I'm like, no, babe, this is a wave. It's happened before. It'll continue to happen again. It's up and down. We're all good. Here's the list of coaches.
Yep. So say we all.
Yeah. Here's some business classes you may want to take, because sometimes from an artistic perspective, we tend to forget, oh, that's right, we're running a business. I am the business. Okay. And so all that fun stuff. So it's been great seeing and meeting new narrators and even new authors too that are coming into this world, fiction, and giving us great stories. So it's all good. And that's one of the things too and you brought it up about you being a mixed individual, and we're having that dialogue now more so than ever about having own voices and, you know, diversifying and being inclusive, but also not going to that stereotypical, oh, he's Latin, vamos con los mexicanos, you know, accent kind of thing. And or they're first generation American and they're speaking in English in an accent. Like, no, I don't. I know I have an accent. Good luck trying to figure that one out, because I am from Florida. Born and raised there. They're like, what accent is that? I go, I have no clue.
It's just me. It's just me.
This is what you get. But it's just one of those things where we're having that dialogue now. How are you finding that now that you've been doing this for a few years? That, you know, accent work, you know, multilingual, all this fun stuff kind of has been part of your journey as well.
It's such a great question. It has been a journey because, you know, in the theater work and the little bit of film work that I've done, I've been very pigeonholed, right? I had a conversation with a really wonderful writer, director, and human, who I worked on one of his feature films. And during, you know, the height of 2020, with all of the cultural shifts and uprisings and protests and everything that was going on, and all the dialogue that was suddenly starting, and, you know, there's one of my favorite memes that floated around for a while was, suddenly we don't have access to watching sports, and now y'all notice finally because you're taking the time to actually listen that all of these problems have been here this entire time. But during the height of all of that, when oh God, what was it called? The We See You WAT, the We See You White American Theater organization sprung up. And one of the things that was in their kind of manifesto, if you will, was stop asking your performers, stop putting in your scripts like the character name, parenthetical, in insert language, and then a line in English, and expecting your performers to translate that and then say it in the language that you're assuming they know how to speak. And that's happened so many times, so many times. And I'm not fluent in Spanish. I speak some, like I can, you know, I passable, I can understand a lot. I can read it. I can say it out loud, and I can say it correctly, but I'm nowhere near fluent. And there was this director who I had a wonderful time working on his film, but I posted something on social media that was like, no, seriously, stop telling your actors, stop assuming that we speak Spanish just because there's a Z at the end of my last name. And he commented, he was like, amen. And I was like, no, dude, we actually have to have a phone call now because you did this to me. Like you did this, and I want to be respectful, and I want to honor the fun and the joy that I had working with you. But that you did this, you perpetrated this exact thing that you are now saying, yeah, this is a problem. And I think it's such a great example of how pigeonholy the inherently visual mediums of entertainment can become. And so coming into audiobooks has been a really fascinating journey, because I feel much safer to like, if I mispronounce something in Spanish, I'm just going to get a note from the quality control department to say, hey, there's a pickup. You need to say this way. And it's not going to, you know, be in the review in the LA Times where someone's like, oh, you clearly don't speak Spanish, you know. So there's a safety in that, but there's also at the same time, there's a weird, I've felt a weird sense of in a way, like skirting appropriation, because, you know, I'll find a character who is clearly, let's say, Black, and okay, how much do I put that into my voice? Like how much do I let the voice reflect that? Do I want it to be clear and subtle? Do I not want to add anything to it? Like, do I want to find a way to honor this reality of this character without becoming problematic myself, without becoming appropriative, without becoming stereotypy? And I've spoken with a lot of colleagues and a lot of friends who are different ethnicities, races, whatever than I am about this exact thing, because it's a tricky balance. And I personally, I find it really, at the end of the day, fun to get to be this nuanced and this specific, that like, if I'm going to be New Yorican, I'm going to be New Yorican, man. But like, if I'm going to be East LA, man, I'm going to do Cheech Marin. Right. Like, being able to have that level of specificity with just dialect, with just voice, and knowing that the audience is not going to have any kind of visual cue that will color their experience is, I think, a really kind of delightful, challenging. I mean, it's a lot of work to, suddenly somebody's like, oh, by the way, you're from Portugal. And I'm like, oh.
Am I speaking Portuguese in here, or am I speaking English with a Portuguese accent?
Right. Yeah. And also, I don't have that one in my tool belt. I did not list that on my resume. So
you got it.
I'm very fortunate right now. A buddy of mine is helping me with a ton of Portuguese in a title that I'm narrating this week, and that is the weakest spot for me is Portuguese, because it's so close to Spanish, Italian, French, but it's so different.
Yeah,
and it's my mouth and my brain just don't want to do it. But it's been a really kind of healing experience to have the safety to explore specificity, while also being very conscious of, I don't ever want to come off. I don't ever want to harm anyone. I don't want anybody to be hurt by me accidentally falling into a stereotype, but while also trying to maintain a certain level of authenticity and specificity that tells the story and tells it accurately.
Yeah, of that character. Yeah, because that's also where I used to hate those forms in school, when they're like,
yes,
you're and other. I'm sure that other. I'm like, are you asking for the color of my skin because my ass hasn't seen it that late, so I can tell you white? Are you asking where I was born? American. If you're asking where my parents are from, Chile/Cuban, but my grandmother's Argentinian and she lives with me, so I identify as that too. Or what are you asking me? Because it's like, where do I fit in? And the being put into advanced Spanish because my maiden name was Milian. And I'm like, no. This is as far as Spanish goes. Los pollitos dicen pío, pío, pío. Not only can I sing it and I can say it, but I can read it and I can write it. But that's as far as it goes. Right. But again, the assumptions are always there, and to some extent, whether they're, if they're from, any form of other country across the world. Yeah. There's always that assumption, and negative and bad and good and stereotypes and all that stuff. And I think that's also where we're having the conversation is important, which before we may not even have had it. So that's also has been good, in this more newer side of the audiobook world, where you too can be the vampire that's 6'7" and, blonde with blue eyes. He doesn't have blonde or blue eyes, guys.
Well,
also not a vampire that I'm aware of, anyways.
It's on the cover of the one book that I did pen myself and self-published. I did put myself on the cover, and on that one I do have blue eyes.
See? Okay, so that's the other thing too. Remember, prior to starting the episode, he and I were having this conversation, and I was like, what don't you do? And that was because as I've learned more about him, and when I met him, like, ooh, that guy in the book cover at the event kind of looks like you. And I'm like, oh shit, it is you. Okay. So how writing is also a creative outlet and also another skill set that you have. How did that come for you that you wanted to be a writer?
This This is it's such a ridiculous story. I've always enjoyed storytelling in all of its expressions. I've always enjoyed writing little stories and journaling, and I'm a big reader already. So I love the written word. And when I when I was in college, my sophomore year, there was this girl, and she was were we on the same floor? No, we were on different floors, but in the same building in the dorms. And she was so cute. And I liked her so much. And she was going to go on the Ireland Writers Workshop Summer Study Abroad program. And I was like, I can do that. So I chased this girl to Ireland. But in so doing, I accidentally went on this writer's retreat for a month in Ireland. And as a result of that, I realized that I was at a point where I was looking at all the credits that I had accrued in my degree. And I was like, if I do like 2 more classes in English and writing, I'll have a minor in creative writing. And I was like, I've got the time. I overpacked my schedule so much in the first year, second year, that like, I was doing like 20, 24 credits a year. So I was like, I've got the time. I can just add this in. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. So I ended up with a creative writing minor in addition to my BA in drama. And subsequently, when I did my very first out of town theater gig, was Taming of the Shrew in Germantown, Tennessee. And the guy who played Petruchio and I were housed together. And this is, what is this, 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. I think must have been 2013. It doesn't matter. But so I'm 20, 25, 26, and I'm all excited and enthusiastic, and the world's still cool. And I get out there and I'm like, wow. So like, what else do you do? And he's like, oh, I write. And I'm like, oh, cool. What do you write? And he's like, you don't want to know. And I'm like, why? No, I want to know. I'm excited. And he's like, well, I ghost write erotica. And I'm like, what? You just said several words. I don't know what any of them mean. And so he explained that he'd been a TV and film writer, kind of as his side hustle, and he fell into making ends meet with ghost writing erotica. And I was like, how does one do that? And he told me where to go. And so I went there and went, oh, I'm actually kind of good at this. And suddenly I was reading romance and erotica, reading a lot of, there was a lot of step sibling stuff. My first couple ghostwriting gigs were step sibling. There was some like dad's best friend, stepfather kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then there was a whole lot of dragon shifters. There were some aliens with, that were very, James Cameron Avatar coded. So, big sexy blue dudes with tails, very prehensile tails, very useful tails. But I probably wrote like 15, 20 novels. And then again, COVID came along and I was like, I've done all of these for other people under other people's names. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to make one of my own. And so that's how I ended up writing Wolf Restrained.
Not only did you write it, but you also landed on the cover.
I did. It's had to be like July 2020. Mm-hmm. So I took that picture of myself, set up the camera on the tripod, took that picture against my closet where I do my self-tapes for commercial stuff, and just photoshopped the cover myself.
And folks, that's how you start a career.
Yep.
You got to take that leap. right?
Yeah.
You got to take that leap, and it's just fantastic. And so that was also a bit of my introduction to Mr. Andrew here, was walking by the table at this event and going, hey, because I know you from Adam from before, literally.
Yeah.
And like, so what do you narrate? And then there's this book. I'm like, you kind of look like the dude. And then we started, just talking and stuff like that. And it's I love it when there's so many different aspects to this industry that you can find your space and you can play in the sandbox and you're not ruining for anybody else. There's, they say there's no competition. There isn't, and there shouldn't be, but that's a different podcast conversation about it. But you can find your own groove. And I mean, here you are, fast forward since then, and you've written a book, you've narrated stuff too. I'm like, what's next for you as far as all this stuff? Are you doing more writing? Are you going to get those books that you have written now in audio as well? Or
yeah, so I definitely intend to put Wolf Restrained, my own novel, into audio. I have somebody in mind. I haven't asked her yet, but I have somebody in mind for the female lead. I definitely want to do that within the next 12 months. It's been, I have a whole folder organization system on my computer's desktop for what I'm working on. And it's been sitting there staring at me for like a year and a half. And I know at this point, I just need to schedule it in and get the dang thing done. So that will happen in the next 12 months. It will not happen before December, but sometime in 2025, that is gonna happen. And otherwise, I mean, I'm really enjoying just living in the audiobook space. I ended Wolf Restrained with one heck of a cliffhanger, and there's a very, very small but very mighty contingent who are like, write the second book, you bastard.
I'm sure there were other words being used too. That's for sure. We don't like cliffhangers. We're like, where is it?
So at some point I will come back around to that. But I'm really enjoying being in the audiobook world. I also do post-production. I do audio editing, mastering, engineering, all of that. So I've branched out into doing that for other narrators as well. And it is the most, when you have just kind of a desk job, right? There's going to be things that you're like, the data entry into these spreadsheets is monotonous and boring, but kind of relaxing, right? And it's that is that for me. So I want to do more of that. I want to eventually, this is, pie in the sky several years in the future. I would like to be publishing audiobooks. I would like to have my own press where we are making people's books come to audio life. But for now, I'm really enjoying narrating. I'm really enjoying doing the engineering side when I have the opportunity to. But yeah, at some point there will be a sequel to the book. At some point there will be an audio of it within the next 12 months, and definitely at some point there will be my own publishing press.
Wow. Telling you, it's one of those things where I was again looking more into you, and I'm like, look on his Facebook, he has a whip. What does he do?
I do make bullwhips and perform with them. And it is not at all sexy.
Yeah, who knows? It's one of those things we'll do a panel like how to make bullwhipping sexy. But it's definitely an art form when all this stuff that you do, and knowing that you love narrating and the performing of stuff like that for audiobooks. And you touched on it before about the different characters and being able to do, the vampire, the alien, or the guy next door who also is a firefighter, all these things. Not all in the same book, folks. But then again, you never know.
Never know.
Never know. Accents is one of the things that we do talk about, and people are always, and myself included, we're suckers for accents. And you were talking about how you're working on your Portuguese, but what's your favorite accent to perform?
Oh man, it's all over the place. This is again such a great question that I have another meandering story about. So I've always, ever since I was a kid, I was just talking to a buddy over the weekend. We were talking about that our particular generation of actors got sold an idea of what acting was going to be that turned out to not at all be what it is.
Mm-hmm.
We were raised in the Jim Carrey generation, but we're living in the Cillian Murphy times. And so, the way I've described it before is I was trained that acting is, ooh, but acting now is, I'm not going to move my face. I'm not going to move anything. And my mouth is barely going to open. Like it's a very different performative world that we are now living in. Right. But growing up, I followed, my performers of choice were the Robin Williams and the Jim Carreys and these people who would put on all of these voices and characters and impressions and ridiculous antics. So I grew up loving to try to get accents right. That's just a thing that my brain naturally does. If you leave me in a room with somebody who has a dialect naturally, it takes an active effort for me not to start trying to imitate them because I want to get it right. And I'm in the room with you. I can actually hear it right now. And I can see the way your jaw lines up and everything. So I've always loved dialect work. When after college, before I moved to LA, I had a buddy who he and I like to party. And one of the games that he loved playing was, we'd be a couple drinks in and he would go, Perez, start a monologue. And I would. Whatever monologue came to mind, I would start. And he would just start spitting the names of dialects at me. And my job was in the middle of the monologue, even the middle of the word, to switch into whatever he just shouted. Mm. Come 2012, 2011, I'm in San Francisco auditioning for a company called the San Francisco Mime Troupe, who are amazing, like political, social activism theater. Been around since the 60s. They're awesome. I audition for them. I have a wonderful time. They're delightful. They just simply can't house. So I wasn't able to work with them. But in that audition, I do my monologue, I do my song, and they go, you got a lot of dialects listed here. And I'm like, yeah. They're like, can you actually do all of those? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, start your monologue again. Oh. And I'm like, I have been training for this day for years. It's something that I've just always really loved doing. I would say my Dublin is one of the stronger ones because I spent time there. But I think one of the fun things for a lot of the dialects that I do is how I get into them. And Scottish was one that I really struggled with because it's a lot of tongue strength that we as Americans don't naturally have. And the way that I have found to get into it is, God bless you, Simon Pegg, in what was it, the first of the new Star Trek movies, where he's on the Dreadnought, and there's that moment where he's like, trying to open the hatch. No, it is the second one because it's with Khan. He's like trying to open the hatch or whatever for Khan and Kirk to get on board. And he's got a line where he goes, are you Starfleet or private security? Because they look like private security. And it takes me that entire line to get into the Scottish. So I in all of my books that have a Scottish character, I have this moment where I'm in the booth and he gazed into her eyes and he said, are you Starfleet or private security? Because you look like private security. I love the way your eyes look. Like I have to take that aside, get back into it, and then come back into it.
Oh yeah, a lot of when I've spoken to the narrators, a lot of them have a phrase that kind of gets them started to be able to tell them, and others just jump straight right into it. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, and there's some accents that, and usually by the end of a book, mm-hmm. I'll be in a zone where I can just jump right in. one of my favorite things to do is characters interrupting each other with dialogue. I love those moments because there's such a delicious challenge to go from, especially if I had one title where I had a Scotsman and an Englishman who were romantically interested and had a huge chapter that was mostly dialogue. And having to bounce back and forth between those was, I mean, that was my Olympics, right? Like it was just like, I had to be so focused and the world disappeared around me and I was nowhere but in this scene. It was such a delight.
Yeah. So the other flip side of that question then is, which is the one that you like least, or is the hardest for you to perform?
Portuguese, 100% Portuguese. It's a beautiful language. I love it. I love listening to it. My mouth refuses to do it. It is so hard.
It is. I mean, like when I was in Miami and working in the school system as one of their office managers and stuff like that, we would have parents come in and there was always that one family that was from Portugal that would come in and pick up there and they're like, Viviana. And I'm like, ¿qué? What? Like what? And they're here. And I'm like, you can talk to them. I don't need, they're like, no. I'm like, oh, that's right. Portuguese. I know Spanish. Okay.
Yep.
And having that dialogue and it's just, and it sounds so, it's very melody kind of that. And then there's also some of these harder words. I'm like, okay, there's so many things going on at the same time. And I'm like, okay, that's more Italian and that means this versus a Spanish, but it's great. It's really lovely stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
it's such a sexy language and my mouth just won't do it.
Well, I mean, it's also the thing, like, again, with the different characters, when someone says, oh, I had one author that was writing a Latin character and they didn't have an accent when they spoke English. So they're like, so when is he going to speak Spanish? And I'm like, first generation American? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, when he's pissed off or when there's sexy times.
Yeah.
Those are the Spanish that are going to come out.
Yep. Yep. And it's so fun to be able to make those choices. And again, going back to my previous life in the theater, so frequently I would make a choice. I would make a decision based on the context in the script. And, traditionally and frequently and by and large, the 60-something white straight male director would go, I don't like that. Do it this way. And that way would be either whiter or like more urban, right? And so to be in the audiobook space and to have that freedom to go, no, I'm basing this on evidence. I'm basing this choice on evidence, and to have those moments where you go, oh yeah, the accent comes out when he's pissed or horny. Mm-hmm. Like that, when the defenses are down, when the walls come down, he's no longer code switching. And that's when we get to hear what's really ticking inside.
Yeah. They know that I'm mad when the Argentinian accent comes out. And I'm like, ay, este baludo, hija de gran puta.
Yep.
With the accent. And I'm like, they're like, but aren't you from? I'm like, listen, again, that Cuban, mother Chilean, only Chilean in the family. Everyone else is Argentinian. And I know how to pronounce my R's and my S's, so I can't do the Cuban thing. And those are things too. So like, I get sometimes from you guys as narrators saying, hey, Viv, there's this Spanish word that how do you pronounce it? And I'm like, where are they from?
Yeah, where are they from?
Where are they from? And they're like, what do you mean? So I've had to have that conversation. Like, well, if they're Cuban, they're going to this. And if they're Puerto Rican, that, or they're, from Colombia or this and that. And they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, not everybody speaks Mexican.
Yeah, exactly. Spanish is not Mexican Spanish.
Nope.
No, there's a lot of stuff. But it's always, again, grateful that we're having dialogue, but very much fun. And I'm like you, when I'm hanging out with people that have accents, I'll pick it up. So when I go to Savannah, Georgia, after a few days, a couple, like starting with a little Southern twang, or when I go visit family in Texas, and to this day, the word car, I have to pronounce it mindfully because I went to Boston 20 something odd years ago. And that's the one word that stuck, car. So like here I am in Orlando saying, hey, I'm going to go to the car.
Put the car in the garage.
Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, that exactly that.
Yeah. There's all these things. But I love it. I love it too. It's like maybe one day I'll do some fun stuff, but I pick it up. So I'm dying to go more. So I'm like to go to, abroad and see it. But I'm also concerned that I'm like, no, listen, I'm not making fun of you. I just happen to have that idiosyncrasy of mine. Pick
Yeah.
up the dialect. It's always fun. So
Yes, I'm looking forward to the day that I have the balls to meet somebody and go, you have a really fascinating accent. Do you mind if I try to mimic it while we're talking right now? Because I talk for a living and I have to do this. And I would love to add you to my repertoire.
I want to say that if I want people, I would love to say that maybe people, with you approaching them in that sense, they would be like, sure. And then because also they're like, look, he's using me as an example. It's always fun. But yeah, I think I've had to explain that to some people when I first meet them and they do have an accent. I'm like, listen, it's not meant to be disrespectful or anything. I go, it's just that's how my brain works. And I have to unclick it. But sometimes it sounds awesome. Yeah, it's going to come out. Or I'm just enthralled and I'm just loving how you're talking. So it might just come out. And that's just okay. Little things. Yep. But I have a couple of questions here on more a personal level.
Yes.
For you. So we're going to, love getting that side of you as well. When you're not working, what do you do for fun?
I am a big old school gamer. My Xbox 360 still works. No red circle of death yet. I've got half a dozen Skyrim saves that are all so varied and unique and lovely. I do regret deleting. I had a wood elf named Tamale that was just a ridiculous playthrough that I finally was like, oh, it's just taking up space. I'll just delete it. And I miss Tamale. I wish I still had him. But yeah, I love old school games, the N64, the early Xbox kind of stuff. Like I said, I like you brought up, I do make bullwhips. I have one in progress right here next to me to my left. And I have recently, I do a lot of visual art as well. And I have just taken up a little bit of woodworking. So I think it's, I think it's safe to say there's no way Sam will listen to this episode prior to me going on the cruise that I'm going on. So my partner is on a cruise right now as a performer, and I posted on my Instagram story this a walking stick that I whittled and stained and made, and one of her castmates saw it and was like, "Oh my God, I want a stick. I want a cool stick. Can you bring me a cool stick?" And I've now fallen down the TikTok Stick Nation rabbit hole, which is a delightful place. And so Saturday I went for I was going to get a burger with a buddy of mine, and I was like, I'm early and there's a park nearby. I'm going to go see if I can find Sam a stick. So I went for a walk in the park. I found a solid stick, and I whittled him a Harry Potter wand.
Nice.
So it's just, I'm a fiddler. I'm a tinkerer. I am one of those people who just always needs to be doing a thing, whatever the thing is.
But it seems like you're also a learner, though.
I am. Yeah. I love acquiring new skills. I love just learning about stuff. My favorite podcast is No Such Thing as a Fish. That's out of England. It's the kind of a spin-off to the show QI that I don't know if it's still hosted by Stephen Fry. I know it was at least originally hosted by Stephen Fry, but the podcast is 4 of the researchers for that show. And they come together. The intro is always, this is No Such Thing as a Fish, a weekly podcast where we come together to give you our 4 favorite facts from the last 7 days. And in no particular order, here we go. And these 4 people find a fascinating thing, send each other the headline of whatever that thing is, and then talk about related other tangential facts around whatever that thing is. And they do that 4 times within an hour. And it just, I love it because they're funny and I get to learn so much weird shit.
Yeah. As someone that can also relate, it's also why I'm not picking up epoxy, because I know that I'll end up creating a bunch of things. I'm like, oh, I'll just sell it at the boutique. And I'm like, oh, but I really want, like, no, Vivi. That is how everything else got started.
That there will come a day, I am sure of it. There will come a day where I will get a 3D printer, and it will
looking for one.
it will ruin my life.
Yeah, I've been looking for one. I have some ideas and plans for some things, but I'm like, it's okay. Maybe it's not meant to be. But again, one of those things where I'm sure enough there'll be, new stuff at the shop, or me for fun around the house. Oh, look, I made this into 3D. Because again, similar to you, I see something on TikTok, like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I want to do that.
I want to do that. Yeah. And woodwork is actually one of my things that I'd love to do one day, but I haven't had the time or pick up. They didn't do a whole lot of workshop when I was in school. Otherwise, I would have taken it. But it's fascinating. I would love to be able to build my own furniture pieces and do stuff around the house. But in the meantime, there's a lot of other things that are being done.
Yep.
Yeah. So you like to play with wood?
I do. I love playing with wood.
Yeah. On top of everything else. So I have a thing. I want to say, anytime that we usually go to a grocery store, there's some kind of music in the background. Right? So what's that one song that it doesn't matter really where it is, whether it's in the grocery store or someplace else, that if it's playing, you're going to start singing it out loud and proud?
Oh, that's a good one. There's a lot. That's the first two that come to mind are Pour Some Sugar on Me and Welcome to the Jungle, because I used to front a band that was like a 60s, 70s, 80s hair rock cover band. And we figured out, our guitarist and bassist figured out that if you take the end of Pour Some Sugar on Me and the beginning of Welcome to the Jungle and you fuse them, it is the sickest thing that has ever happened to rock. And so it is that ending, pour some sugar on, banana, dun 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 dun, and you go right into Welcome to the Jungle. And we would do this 2-part cover, and anytime I hear one or the other in the grocery store, I'm like, don't let it out. That or Make a Man Out of You from Disney's Hercules.
Yeah, that is
Hercules. No, Mulan.
Mulan. Yeah, I was gonna say, ooh, wait, hold on. I think that's Mulan. Yeah, that is a good song though. Yeah. But it's also funny that these two songs are now playing sometimes as elevator music in some places, and I'm like, oh my god. I highly recommend to anybody listening. I highly recommend looking up. Oh God, I can't remember the name of the band, but I know you can find them if you look up Bossa N' Roses, as in Bossa Nova, Guns N' Roses. So if you look up Bossa N' Roses, you will find this band that does Bossa Nova covers of like all kinds of classic rock bands. And it used to drive me absolutely insane until I realized how tongue-in-cheek it is. Oh my God, their Paradise City is the most absurd thing you have ever. It's just like, welcome down to the Paradise City. It's so stupid and so delightful. Highly recommend if you want some elevator music, classic rock. Yeah, it is peak. I'm going to have to look that up and see about creating that Spotify list. So when my husband's in the car, like that sounds fun, because I've seen it happens too. I'm like, hey, I know that song. And I'm like, dude, that was considered rock back in the 90s. And it's all music now. That's people calling Third Eye Blind classic rock. I'm like, no. Yeah. I was like, no. Or my favorite, or other stuff too, that was like, oh, that's rock. I'm like, no. There's a difference between rock and like Metallica is like heavy metal and all this other stuff. And I'm like, yeah. Fun times. All this stuff getting older is fun. I'm still here for Guar. You know. You work with words all day as a narrator. I do too. What's your favorite word? Different from your favorite curse word? That's the part 2 of the story of the question.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shoot. That's a good one. What is my favorite word? I have no idea. I know what my least favorite word is.
Okay. What's your least favorite word?
Moist. I'm one of those people. I like cilantro. I love cilantro. I have the gene for that. I also have the gene that hates moist. I just I hate it. Shoot, my favorite word. Yeah, I don't know. I would have to think on that. I think one of my
folks.
one of my favorite things to get to do as Julio, as the spicy narrator, is like a really cliche one-liner. Anything that's just, good girl, stuff like that is just like, because you get to be so over the top with it.
Right.
It's so much fun. But yeah, just like a favorite singular word. Oh yeah, there's just so many of them.
It's okay. We'll have you back, and we'll
I'll
have
think about it.
You have to think about it. And the other thing too, that's the other stuff too, because you are bilingual. It doesn't necessarily have to be an English word. It could be in a different language. Right. So part of that other question is going to be like, what's your favorite curse word?
Fuck. It's perfect. It's a perfect word. It's, you get that and you get the and you get the it's just it's a perfect word.
Yeah. There's been a few people that have said that about the beginning and the end of that, the enunciations of it, and just getting it in there.
Yeah. I also love the oh god, it's not Monty Python, right? There was an audio clip that floated around for a good number of years back in like the early 2000s. That was and now the uses of the word fuck. And it was just this audio clip of a dude talking about all the ways that you can use this word and how versatile it is. And it's if you haven't heard it, it's a delightful clip. It's like 3 minutes long, 4 minutes long.
Wow.
I remember at one point in it, he goes, and it can be used as almost every word in the sentence. For example, fuck the fucking fuckers. It's just a great word.
It is. And I want to say that I can use that word as a noun, adjective, pronoun, anything. And I am fine with, people cursing, and even like the kids, as long there's a certain age and as long as they're aware of it. But I had told my sister, I'm like, yeah, if Gabby ever gets called into the principal's office for some form of creative words, just let me know. I'll go to the meeting.
100%.
Yeah. And there was one time, like, how do you why are we saying that word? And then she explained, like, okay, then that's the right usage. Are you using it as a verb or a noun? Verb. I'm like, that's how she learns.
Yep. Use it mindfully. Very demure, very cutesy. Very
mindful. God, that me. Right. Well, it's words. They have meaning. And so when you're going to use them, just even like profanity, it loses a little bit of its his effort behind it if you're just throwing it out there for the sake of shock. Same thing sometimes like with sex scenes in books or certain things or plot twists. It's not really a plot twist. It loses value. So. There's beautiful research on the neurological benefits to mindfully cursing.
And it does actively release dopamine in your brain when you mindfully say something that is naughty, right? It does have a chemical reaction in your brain, and so doing if you're just cursing like a sailor and it's just part of your lexicon, that's one thing. Right. But if you have if you're making a point and it is fucking important. That those little moments are good. They're healing. They're helpful inside your little brain.
Yes. Yep. It's true. And also the studies have shown that people that curse live longer.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah, because we're getting our fucking stresses out. Which also sometimes like, Viv, you worked for Disney for 16 years in human resource? And I'm like, yeah, I did. You got very creative.
Listen, if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. The dirtiest people in theater are the ones who work in kids theater.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what oh, I'm Winnie the Pooh.
Mm-hmm.
I'm backstage. I'm going to put it in your butt. Filthy. The filthiest jokes that I've ever heard have been in children's theater.
It's an outlet. It's a creativeness and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's play.
It's all fun. As long as there's consent, then we're all good. Because that is important, folks. Consent is 100% important and very sexy.
If somebody expresses discomfort, knock it the fuck off. But
yes. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's good to play. It's good that's to play. What she said.
Hey-oh. Boing, 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 boing.
So the other thing I'd love to do with my guests, because it's so fun to see what else you guys can come up with too, is playing the game of 2 truths and a lie, where you tell us 3 things about yourself and we have to figure out which one's the lie. It's always fun. We're like, damn it, I have to create a new one because I just told you all about it. And I'm like, not my fault. So if you're ready with your 3 things.
Let me remember my third one. Okay, that.
And that.
Oh, I had a third one. I knew I should have written this down.
I tell them in the emails to write this down, folks, just for that.
I wrote down everything else. I wrote down the fuck, marry, kill. I wrote down the dinner guests.
Good.
Oh, what was okay? Let me come up with the third one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, sure.
Okay. So whenever you're ready. Yep, okay. I'm ready.
2 truths and a lie. I used to drive a motorcycle. My favorite team are the 49ers. I have precisely 1 tattoo.
Okay. Drive a motorcycle, favorite team's the 49ers, and have precisely just 1 tattoo.
Yep.
Now I'm trying to remember because I've seen you in shorts. Hold on. And that's also where I'm like, well, technically you may have just seen the 1, but other places. Anyways. All right. I can totally see you driving a motorcycle. 49ers are the tattoo. Oh, see, shoots. Okay. Is the favorite sports the team, the 49ers, the lie?
It is. They used to be, and then I decided I don't give a shit about sports. I was raised a Niners fan. I was, the Steve Young, Jerry Rice era. Was 10 years old and like, yay, 49ers, because everybody else is saying yay, 49ers. And after college, I had always wanted somebody to invite me to their fantasy football league. Like I wanted that bro rite of passage. And finally in 2016, somebody invited me to a fantasy football league. And I sat there with that text and I went, no, I don't want to do that. That seems like a lot of work and I'm not going to derive any pleasure from this. I don't give a fuck about sports. I'm done.
All right. So that's the lie. So you have written, motorcycle. Yep. And you have precisely just the 1 tattoo.
Indeed, I do.
All right. Any stories behind this, the 1, or you just haven't seen anything that makes you want to go, oh, I want to put that on my body for the rest of my life?
No, there's a few others that I want. Right. The one that I have is a bicycle yield sign on my left calf, because in 2010 I was hit head on my bicycle by a Suburban. And I was it messed me up. I didn't break anything, but what we were eventually able to determine was that where my knee dented his hood, my kneecap, my patella, was so severely bone bruised that when the swelling was low enough that we were actually able to get a solid MRI, the doctor and the radiologist looked at that and went, please tell me you haven't been walking on this. And I'm like, no, of course I haven't. It hurts too much. Like I haven't used this leg in months. And they're like, good, because it is so severely bone bruised that were you to try to put pressure on this consistently, it would have shattered like a spider web. So I have my little, I call it my purple heart, my little bike yield tattoo.
Well, see, well, thank you for sharing that because it was on my list of things to do to talk to you. I was like, because that was an interesting tattoo. I'm like, why is there a bicycle thing?
Yep. I was a big cyclist when I was living in Seattle, and when I came back to California for a little while, LA is just so dangerous to cycle in. The city's just not set up for it, and it's just impractical.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. And then the motorcycle.
So after I got hit by a car on my bicycle, I decided, you know what would be a good idea?
No.
I'm going to buy a motorcycle. So I did. I'm not making this up. I was still using a cane to get around when I went and trained and got licensed for a motorcycle. And this will come as a shock. I eventually got hit by a car on my motorcycle. So that's one of the other tattoos that I do still want to get is the Honda Motorsports logo right above the scar on my ankle from where my bone came out.
So same kind of, vehicle, two wheels, just a lot more powerful.
Yeah. Oh, maybe if I was faster, I could have. Nope. That's not the answer, Andrew.
No, it's not. But also does make for very interesting stories.
Sure does.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. The other thing that I've been starting to ask the guests is guilty pleasures. So you don't know this because this is your first time here. For the Patreon side of things, we do go and do a quick round of Would You Rather. And the question is, would you rather let everyone know what your guilty pleasures are or not partake in these guilty pleasures ever again? And, we tend to just leave it at the answer, whether, you're going to tell everybody or no, you're not, because then you're going to lose it. And then we kind of play around with it. Yeah, but don't worry. The next time that you come on, we'll start talking about those guilty pleasures because 99.9% of the guests have always said, oh, yeah, I'm going to tell everybody. And I'm like, yeah, whoopsie. And, doing this for now 10 years, never really went back to actually asking them. So I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. It's 10 years now. So now we're asking you guys, what are some of your guilty pleasures?
This is such an interesting question. And it's funny because this is something that we kind of touched on a little while ago that, I'm a weirdo, right? Like I just do stuff. And if it seems interesting, I'm just going to do it. I remember being in high school and my friends being like, it is impossible to embarrass you. And I was like, yes, because I don't care. I just like, if I'm interested in a thing, I'm going to talk about the thing. Like this propensity has bitten me in the ass so often in life. And now, in my mid 30s, it's great that I can come back to full candor and full honesty. And that's not only acceptable, but desired. But, high school, college, in your 20s, when you're trying to date, nobody wants you to just walk over to them at a bar and be like, hi, you're pretty. Can we talk? Like that doesn't go over well. But that's my natural speed. And so it's really hard for me to like genuinely get embarrassed. And as such, it's also really hard for me to call any of my pleasures guilty because I'm like, these are just the things that I like. Like, yes, I'm going to stay up until 1 o'clock in the morning playing Skyrim. Yes, I'm going to watch children's movies and cry with a bottle of wine because it's delightful. Like, I just like the things that I like. So I don't really know that any of them are guilty pleasures. I'm just at peace with like, no, yeah, tonight I'm going to watch Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2 for the 400th time because it's a delightful story that makes me feel safe and happy. And then tomorrow I might rewatch Firefly. Like, I don't know. I was really racking my brain for anything that I'm like, oh, I'm embarrassed about this thing that I love, but I kind of just like the things I like.
Well, that's also why I kind of wanted to have this conversation is that a lot of times we're told that anything that brings us joy is bad or that we shouldn't because that if you have time to lily-lag, which is one of my favorite words, you then have time to do some work.
Yep.
And we are constantly go, go, go. And also because of the world we all work in here with romance specifically, sexy conversations, sexy times, and also a little bit taboo sometimes about talking about what we want and what we like. And oh yeah, did not know that I had that kink. Thank you, kind of a stuff. And everybody automatically thinks also when it comes down to guilty pleasures that we're talking about a sexual act of some sorts.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's not that kind of podcast. Sorry. I will talk to you at the bar or at hanging out and stuff about all sorts of different things. But
absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Because there are people, but that's my, boundary of like, I don't care what you do. We're not talking about those extra, fun activities later.
Yep.
But it's just a conversation about the guilty, the what do you do for fun? That might be like some people like to eat ice cream for dinner or just walk around in their peeing in your yoga pants and stuff like that. There's just all these fun things, but also normalizing that. And I think that as much as we continue to move forward and having the whole self-care, it's okay to take a bubble bath at 9:00 at night. We tend to forget that it's okay. And so these kind of conversations are still fun, but also like, okay, I don't think I've seen the Meatball movies.
Oh, they're so funny. They're so good. It's the same team, same writing team as the Lego movie.
Okay.
It's Chris Miller and Phil Lord. All of their stuff is sublime. They did the Lego movies. They did the Cloudies. They did Mitchell's versus the Machines. They did the new Dwayne Johnson Jumanji movies. Just the speed of their comedy is so fun because it's just pause, like it's so fast.
Yeah,
it's okay. It feeds my little hamster brain that's just like more jokes, 27 jokes in a minute. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They're absolutely delightful. But I agree that we as a society, particularly, I would argue a lot of like Western English speaking societies in general, but particularly in the States, we have really demonized pleasure, and trying to reprogram that and trying to unlearn that is a huge task. And we're all saddled with it. And I did not have what one would call like a smooth upbringing. And so when I was able as a child to find moments of joy, those were sacred. And since then, I have not shied away from, there have been periods where I restrained myself and said, no, you have to do more work. If you, like you said, if you have the time to, what was the word you used?
Lily lag.
Yes. If you have the time to lily lag, you might as well be working. You should be being productive. And I've lived a lot of years where that has been my MO. And I'm very conscious of not living that way anymore because it takes active effort to unprogram that.
It does.
And it's, I've never been shy about sharing what I like. What I've been shy about is letting myself actually do those things. And I think exactly to your point, it's so vital that we remember that we don't exist just to be a cog in the economic machine. If that's the point, then who cares? We have to find those moments where we can enjoy stuff, and it doesn't fucking matter what it is you enjoy, as long as it's safe and not harmful, and like you're not infringing on anybody else's basic autonomy. But like, if you like to hang glide, go fucking hang glide. If you like to play Skyrim, go play Skyrim. It doesn't matter. Just do the things you like, because we only have so much time. And if we spend the whole of it just cranking out product, who cares?
But you can't make memories when you're doing all that stuff. And I will say that, when we went to Stimulit, so Stimulit's a convention that is happening in California. It's a book lovers thing where, all lovers of books go, but it's specifically geared towards diversity and inclusion, which is, again, something that I'm very passionate about. And, we met there. And one of the things that we got as a group we went to Disneyland. And as a girl that, again, worked for the company for 16 years, and here in Florida, I've never been to anything, in California. So it was interesting to see some stuff. But what I wanted to mention was when we were in that Star Wars ride. Is it okay if I share that story?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. So what was the name of the ride again?
Smuggler's Run.
Smuggler's Run.
Wait,
Okay.
are we talking Smuggler's Run or Rise of the Resistance?
So I think it's Smuggler's Run, where you have the two captains.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we're in line, and I've never, I mean, I worked for the opening team for here in Orlando for the whole land, but never did any of the rides. So there was a moment where, Andrew turns around to the group of us and he's like, can I please be can I be the captain? Because every single time I got on this ride, there's always been kids, and then they get to be the captain. And for a minute there, I was like, the fact that you just asked was like, you could ask for things, dude. That's fantastic. And to be able to do it too. And then he and I were like, we're gonna have to fight for it. Which we did that whole typical girl, white girl fight kind of thing.
Yep.
But because at the time and honestly, he was gonna be captain. I was fine with it. I was just messing with him because I am that friend. But it was just so much fun. And there was this, then we found out that there's actually two captains. So I was like, oh, even funner. But I just love the fact that you felt safe enough to ask, because asking for things is not something that I think people some people do it all the time, and they have the audacity to do it in some cases. Others, we will just wither and just be like, I'll just go with the flow. And even if I wanted to be the captain for the 5,000th time that I've ridden this ride, never will it be, because I won't ask for it. But it was just so much fun to just see you go for it and asking it and be so excited about it and to do it. And you were the captain there, and I was like, so much fun.
Oh my God.
Like, I want to do it again.
Exactly to every single point that you just made. Like, I was wrestling with myself inside my head, and I was like, okay, Andrew, this is the time to do this. These are people who you trust. These are people who are your friends. I mean, three of you I had known for precisely 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
and I stood there in line and was like, no, these are people who are trustworthy. These are people who are not going to turn this into some way to resent you down the line. This is a genuinely, authentically safe space. If there is ever going to be a time to actually make this ask, I'm not going to do it when, there's a 7-year-old who's like, I want to fly the Falcon.
Yeah.
I mean, like I told you guys, every time I'm like, listen, kid, I was talking about flying the Falcon before you were a glimmer in your daddy's eye, but I'm not going to do that. Like, that'd be a shitty thing to do. I'm not going to deny a kid at Disneyland the chance to fly the Millennium Falcon. That's ridiculous. But I'm standing there with this group of 4 women who are all kind, intelligent, compassionate, trustworthy people. I feel completely safe. And we're at Disneyland. Like, the point of the day is to go be kids. And what little kid me really, really, really wanted to do was fly the Falcon. And so I had to muster up the courage to go, you guys, would it be okay if I claim this for myself? And I'm going to post the picture this week that Ariel got of me afterward with my hands on the gears. But oh my God, it was having that moment right at the end of the ride where they're like, hit light speed. And it was me who had to pull the light speed lever.
Yeah.
And I just shouted, punch it, Chewie.
He did.
It, like, that healed a part of my soul that could not have happened if I were not in an environment that was as safe as we all were. And also if I had not asked for what I needed and wanted in that moment. And that's, I think, exactly to the point that you and I are both sitting on, that, we got to find those moments. We got to, you got to ask. There's a wonderful story. I worked because, again, what don't I do? I worked in beauty schools for a long time as basically like a academic counselor / therapist. And one of the companies that I worked for was Paul Mitchell. But the other company that I worked for was Aveda, and the first president of Aveda, oh man, whose name I'm actually blanking on right now. He has a small book that he put out called My Life as a Daymaker. And that's the ethos that he wanted the company to really embody, was that when somebody walks through the door, our job is to make their day. And whatever that needs to be for the day, for that person, that's what we do. And in that book, he has a story about this young up and coming stylist who was new at his salon. You know, he's got all these veteran stylists who he's worked with for 10, 15, 20 years. And this new little whippersnapper comes in and is always talking about how his dream is to style a Vogue cover shoot. And lo and behold, there comes a day where Vogue calls this guy and it's like, hey, we need you for a Vogue cover shoot. And he's like, I'm not available. I'm too booked up, but I have somebody perfect for you. And he passes the job to this kid. All the other stylists are suddenly in a huff and they're all pissed off. Like, how dare you, seniority? We've been with you for this long and you give this to this new kid. Like, what the fuck? And in absolute earnestness, he goes, I didn't know you wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
I knew he wanted it because he told me, because we had talked about this being a dream of his. And that story sticks with me because there's this mentality that I think coincides with our aversion to pleasure, with our obsession with productivity and our reluctance to allow ourselves joy and pleasure. That there's this mentality that says, don't tell people your dreams or somehow you'll jinx it. But I really do truly believe, and I point to this story because it's a wonderful example of it. And the Smuggler's Run story is, a very tiny microcosmic version of it. But we have to tell people our dreams. We have to ask for what we want and what we need. And it's hard because we've been trained not to, but we got to do it. It's just, it makes everything better.
Yeah. And honestly, the worst thing that sometimes can happen, yes, it sucks when you get the no, but you don't know until you ask. And
right.
And telling people, and yeah, and also like who you hang out with. If you don't feel safe enough to ask, we may need to start having conversations about who you hang out with.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it's important to do. I that was so much fun for me to be part of that, and that entire trip was just awesome. So I wanted to thank you too for being part of that and helping me see some things for fun, just to be able to, because your energy is so positive all the time, and it's just so loving kind of thing. So I was like, so I just wanted to. But that was a fun day, a couple of hours too, until I start going on drops. But that's another story. No, there was no alcohol involved. I just don't like drops on rides. And then some people forgot to tell me that the Pirates of the Caribbean has two. And it's bigger in California than it is in Orlando. Everything else, Orlando's bigger.
It's a good thing there's no Disney in Texas.
I know. Oh, yeah, that is true. They'd be like, that's a competition. They'd be like, we all, Well, I can continue talking to you forever and playing catch up and fun stuff like that. But before we go, why don't you tell us what you're currently working on and what's coming up next for you?
Yeah, so I'm currently working on a book called Liquid Light that is about the author. The author is a academic professor of comparative religions who found himself studying and falling into the ayahuasca religion of Santo Daime. Really fascinating text, a lot of Portuguese because it is from Brazil. So it's a challenge. I am still doing my research. I start recording tomorrow, but I'm very excited for that one. Other than that, I've got a bunch of stuff coming up. I've got releases coming on the 10th and the 24th. I've got a YA title called Team Chu and the Wild Ghost Chase by Julie C. Dow. I've got a nice spicy one, The Ones We Fight For by Katie Golightly. I've got one about from the perspective of a 12-year-old boy in early Nazi Germany that is incredibly well written and had me convulsing in sobs when I had to narrate the chapter where I was speaking Hitler's words. That it's an amazing book. It's a YA and really frames the history and everything that was happening and the politics and everything really beautifully. It's Rise of the Spider by Michael Spradlin. And then I've got a couple extras. I've got a couple more coming up down the line, more spicy stuff, and then a lot of nonfiction. And I've got a cool literary fiction one coming up that I'm going to be recording in a couple of weeks. And otherwise, I just live in my closet.
Well, it's appreciative. Looking forward to a lot of these stories. Well, thank you again for being a guest and hanging out with me today. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, if you're not following Andrew or Julio on social media, I will include all their information over on the landing page for this episode over at Viviana, Enchantress of Books. So you have to make sure to follow them both. And until next time, happy listening.
Thank you to all of our Audiobook Lovin Podcast Patreon. The Audiobook Lovin Podcast has special Patreon access levels. Join today to receive benefits including early access to episodes, shout-outs, special exclusive content, and much more. Support the podcast by becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/audiobookloving. We thank you for your support.
Thank you for joining us on the Audiobook Lovin Podcast, hosted by Viviana, Enchantress of Books. For links and more information discussed in today's episode, previous podcasts, or the Audiobook Lovin Series, please visit our website, vivianaenchantressofbooks.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a positive review wherever you listen to our podcast. Until next time, happy listening.